Hey everyone, welcome back to the Collector's Compass, the official podcast of Collectors MD, where we explore the intersection of collecting, mental wellness, and responsible engagement across the modern hobby and beyond. I'm your host, Alyx Efron, founder of Collectors MD, and today's episode is an important one and one I've been looking forward to because it gets into the attention a lot of people feel but rarely say out loud. The hobby is full of wins, but many of those wins are quietly built on someone else losing. And if we actually care about a healthier hobby, that's something we have to be willing to talk about. I'm joined today by Paul Petyo, also known as the Card Father. Paul is a collector, a seller, a strong voice for reform, and someone who consistently shows up in the Collectors MD community. He's also a member of our advisory board and someone I deeply respect for the way he thinks about ethics, responsibility, and impact inside the space. This conversation isn't a hit piece. It's not about calling out or canceling platforms or shaming anyone. It's a real discussion about what we normalize, what we ignore, and where the line starts to blur between legitimate business and exploitation. At Collectors MD, we believe collecting can be joyful and also dangerous when systems remove friction. We believe guardrails beat willpower and that change doesn't require shame. It requires better standards and faster intervention when someone is spiraling. Paul, I really appreciate you joining me today. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Alyx. Super excited to be here. Love working with Collectors MD. And yeah, I'm pumped to talk hobby topics, fun things, hopefully bring some levity and keep you on your toes and have a great productive conversation. Man.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I like that you said that. I feel like as a host, I'm always keeping people on their toes, but it's nice for it to be the other way around sometimes. And I know you're certainly capable of doing that. So let's dive into our first segment, which is your origin story from collector to advocate. So again, I want to start with you. How did you become the self-proclaimed card father, and what do you stand for in the hobby?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, like most people, I started collecting when I was younger. I developed my love of sports from my father. I feels like a somewhat universal tale this time. And my dad and I collected, but interestingly, we didn't really collect cards, right? We loved sports and we collected sort of memorabilia and figures and things like that. I have distinct memories of calling Toys R Us as a kid and like pretending to cry and wail and act younger than I was in order for them to like sell us things before they put them on the shelves. And so we built out this really, really big collection. Every inch of wall in my room was covered in sports memorabilia and figurines and other stuff that we loved from players we loved. And the goal was to one day move that into my own home. My hometown of Paradise, California. Uh, Gosh, it's been like 5 years, 6 years now. Was wiped off the map in the Camp Fire, which was still the deadliest wildfire in California history and far and away the most destructive. So we lost everything. Luckily, my dad was okay, but I lost absolutely everything. There was not a single shred of stuff that was left over from that fire, and that just kind of it zapped my enthusiasm. And then, a couple years ago, I realized that I love sports. I love fantasy sports, right? I love being able to stake a claim in a player or find some kind of way to invest. And that led me to buying a pack of cards, right? I bought a pack of cards, hit a cool Shohei Ohtani, no idea what I was looking at, right? And then I like to say that I kind of enrolled in the PhD program of card collecting, which is, I tell people this all the time at shows. There's absolutely zero shame in not knowing something when it comes to card collecting or hobby related, because it is irreducibly complex. It's this galaxy of information, and it sent me down this rabbit hole of collecting. A lot of it was fun, but some of it was dangerous. One of my LCS here in town is a pretty big breaker, and so I was buying into breaks there, and my first break was hugely successful, which of course is always the goal for them, and that just one thing led to another, and I found Whatnot. I found all these sort of live platforms and found myself getting in trouble, right? Being in danger, sort of being susceptible, doing the thing that you never think you're going to be the victim of, right? And buying cards that weren't worth what they were worth, buying on impulse, spending every free moment, checking in, seeing what was for sale. And eventually I landed in this place where it was like, whoa, I've overspent. I've sort of gone over my means, and this has reached kind of a dangerous position. And I wasn't quite sure where to look, and that led me to Collectors MD. I found Collectors MD, reached out to you. You were the only person of the 5 or so people that I reached out to saying, hey, what can I do? What are the guardrails for this? You responded the next day with a big long letter, very thoughtfully crafted. And I thought, wow, this person seems to get it. This organization, if he's a part of it, is clearly the right thing. And that's what's kind of led me on this journey. I've been a lifelong advocate. I've worked in the public sector, private sector. I've been in advocacy groups and public service and volunteer work. Advocacy is sort of my reason for being. And so I shouldn't be surprised that I sort of found that natural inflection point when it came to the hobby, where my love of something could also sort of lead me to this place where I'm advocating for what's best for it, since, love and change, love and update and support are not mutually exclusive. And that's sort of what brought us together. And as I'm sure you've learned in my time Collectors MD, I can be a bit of a pit bull about it, right? I have this belief that if we don't leverage, as a middle-aged white man, right? Like, I was born on third base. And if we don't leverage sort of the gifts and the privilege that we've been given, then who is going to, right? I cannot expect someone else to step up and raise their voice or advocate for some manner of change or adjustment if I'm not willing to do it myself. So I've taken on that sort of personal mantle to be in front and loud about things. And at the same time, I love sports. I love cards. I love the players that, are on my PC. I love being able to watch and invest in them. But I've landed at this place where I think there's a healthy spot where we can still do this. We can still advocate for it. We can still support one another, but also do it in a healthy way where people are protected. The most vulnerable, the voiceless are heard. And that's why I'm here. That's why I collect. That's why I sell.
Awesome, man. That's really well said. I love the whole persona that you've created too, with the Card Father. I hope you don't mind me sharing this image of you at a card show. I think you sent this to me a couple months back, but I mean, you obviously look the part. I think you do a really good job of displaying your intentional collection. And you've also done a really amazing job just in terms of advocating for Collectors MD and everything we stand for, both at these card shows and across our community, whether it be in the group chat, social media. I mean, you're constantly tagging me on X anytime something is relevant. And so I'm super appreciative of that.
This is an important distinction too, Alyx. And like, I chose the Card Father moniker at random, right? I worked with my brother to try and figure out a name because I felt like I needed a name. It just felt weird going to shows or selling online and not sort of having some kind of brand. And I chose it at random. I love the Godfather and Brando, and I love all of that. It felt natural. It felt like kind of this entryway into sort of a brand name. But the key here, and I appreciate you showing the picture. I know I look ridiculous. That's kind of the idea, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Look, here's the thing. The key is that every single show I do, and I've done like 25 different shows now, every single one, I dress up differently, right? And it's all mafia adjacent stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I'll wear a tracksuit. Sometimes it's, a bowler hat and, like cuff sleeve, whatever it is, right? Or you can see I look like Colonel Sanders in a brown overcoat or something, right? Like,
or a black shirt and white tie.
Right. So you go over a black shirt and a white tie with a classic look. And the reason I do it is deliberate, and that is because it's supposed to be about fun.
Right.
You are supposed to have fun in doing this. And I'm absolutely certain there's some people that look at me and go, whoa, that guy's ridiculous. But there are hosts of people that come up and go, hey, I love it, man. I love what you're doing. That's so cool. It takes courage for them to say that, but the idea is that it's fun, right? Like, this guy's ridiculous. It's fun. He's leaning into it, and no disrespect to anyone, but like, I'm not showing up to shows in sweatpants and the shirt I wore yesterday with my slabs of downtowns out, right? Like, just like, here, take it or leave it or whatever. Like, I'm engaged. It's fun. It's meant to be about collecting and meeting people where they are. And deliberately am kind of exposing a personal nerve by dressing like a goofball and taking on this persona at every show so that I'm a little more approachable, right? Like, this guy's weird. He'll probably talk to me, and bring it on, right? Like, I
Yeah.
want to talk about cards and sports and collecting intentionally with you.
Yeah, man. That's what it's all about. And I appreciate you letting me share that. That's, yeah, I mean, it's important also just to like differentiate yourself, but most importantly, show others who you are, right? Be yourself. That's what it's all about. Not trying to, be somebody else or, um, just kind of fit in with the crowd, but, stand out in a way that you're proud of. And, I really respect you for that. Um, Cool. So you talked about, obviously collecting a variety of things growing up. I'm the same way, as you could see behind me, the sneakers, the memorabilia. As a kid, I collected everything from, Hot Wheels to Power Ranger figures to Pokemon cards to, I don't know if you remember MLB Showdown. I was talking to somebody about that this morning and how popular that was in like the early 2000s when I was probably like in middle school. Yeah, I mean, like it's always been sort of rooted in my DNA, and I love meeting other people that share the same passion, not just for the hobby or for sports cards or for sneakers, but like for anything that is tangible that you can enjoy and truly look at and hold and feel like a kid again. That's what it's all about, and that's what we're trying to convey as far as like what the nature of collecting should be about in today's day and age.
Right.
So my next question for you is, when did you start noticing that for a lot of people this wasn't just a hobby anymore, specifically obviously the sports cards?
Yeah, it's I think there's a few inflection points, right? So one is the relentless volume. So there is a new product, new release, new thing every day, every corner, right? Like I said at the onset, like, you need a PhD to understand the cards. I feel like you need a postdoc to understand just like a release calendar and stagger releases, who gets what kind of boxes are, right? Like, it's wild. And once I started to, I mean, first off, it sort of rubbed the sheen off of it, right? I would buy a box, like a retail box that we know to be like a blaster or whatever, and then be told like, hey, that's worthless, or that's not a hobby box, right? And that's a bummer, right? Like, that was a huge bummer, and it was my first sort of taste of that cynicism within the hobby, which is, one thing is not worth, quote unquote, as much as another.
Right.
And it was that kind of triggered this emotional response, where it was like, whoa, you know what, like, no matter how much I buy, the breaks don't stop showing up. They keep showing up. They continue to release products. They will write like, a full case of something. Well, that's got to be all they have, right? And then the next day there's another case, and the next day there's another case, and it's like, whoa, this is, maybe they printed a billion of this, right? Like, maybe it's not as fun or interesting as unique. And it led me down this rabbit hole of trying to further understand. The other thing that happens, and I'm sure I was one of them, is if you show up to breaks consistently, you start to recognize names. And so I would show up to breaks and see half of the break bought out by the same name every time, right? And I couldn't help but think, what's going on there exactly, right? There was nothing, not to begrudge people that sort of buy in bulk like that, but there was nothing intentional about it, right? There wasn't half the league was this person's favorite teams, or that they were targeting specific stuff, right? It was just like, get me the volume, and it led me down this rabbit hole of trying to understand, where exactly this comes from a hobby perspective, and then facing the grim reality that, and I'm sure this is maybe, I'm going to broach a lot of stuff that I hope makes you squirm a little bit, which is like the grim reality of sort of collecting in this hyper capitalist environment, right? Which is,
Sure.
and I know we're going to talk about it being, somewhat zero sum, but it's, we're buying product in an environment where the product never ends, right? Like, there's no end to it. There will always be another thing, no matter what. Whatever you have that's exclusive is not, is going to have something usurp it the next year. And it forced me to look in the mirror, right? It forced me to say, well, wait just a second, right? And then when I started calculating my losses and looking around for other people and finding places like Collectors MD, I distinctly remember the first weekly support call I joined, and someone talking about losing their their home, right? A person, I don't remember who, losing their home. And I thought, oh God, right? Like I can't, it's hard to fathom that something as seemingly simple as this can lead to such a otherworldly catastrophic type event. And it makes you pause, it makes you reflect. If you're decent, right? Again, that one, I'm fine taking offense to other people. If you're willing to sell someone into the grave, then you and I probably won't align and we'll have problems. But beyond that, I think, it made me stop and say, wait a minute, this is more than just card collecting and a hobby. This is like a somewhat cynical, flipping operation / addiction for a lot of people. And there were absolutely no guardrails from a seller perspective, because that's the idea, right? Like that's the game. It wouldn't begrudge me to cut you off on any other addictive substance, because that's how I'm making my money. And as much as I'm sure it hurts a business, I think those things are necessary. And it made me grab my pitchfork, right, and show up with you.
Yeah, man. Well said. And again, you've just been such a great supporter for as long as I can remember. I can't even remember the time in the last year where you joined this movement, when you had reached out to me, because it feels like you've been a part of it since the very beginning. And it's just been so great to have you. And, obviously there's a reason why I invited you to be a part of our advisory board. You just bring such a keen perspective on, the ethics and the, responsibility, accountability that needs to be sort of implemented into, everything we're talking about. So, this morning I had a call with a freelance writer for a major publication, Men's Lifestyle magazine. I'm not going to say which one yet because it's not official, but we're working together on a piece. And, a question he had asked me, he had come across this. Are you familiar with Caleb Hammer? I think somebody actually shared this video in our group chat recently.
No.
But there was this video of this guy that went into major debt because of Pokemon collecting. And so, he was trying to figure out, if that video was like the real deal, or if it was like embellished, exaggerated, kind of like, blown out of proportion just for content purposes, clickbait, etc. And I basically explained to him, I was like, look, it's real. The tone and editing might be cranked up for shock value, but the behaviors are absolutely what we see all the time. The danger is people watching thinking, at least I'm not that bad, when they, recognize way more of it than they want to admit. And, he asked me some really, really important questions. And he was looking at it like, total novice. Like he had no idea. He has no idea about collecting and the world that, we live in, both within sports cards, Pokemon, any form of collecting. And so all of this was just like, his jaw was like on the floor. He just like was amazed by the level of sort of harm that is happening within this space. And so, he asked me, he was like, when you see this sort of thing, whether it be in a weekly meeting or somebody reaching out, are we talking about like life ruining, gambling level harm? And I was like, yeah. And sometimes it's even worse because it's disguised as a childhood hobby, right? People spiral into these like massive amounts of debt. They keep chasing to try to get out of it. And then that compounds, and the amount varies, anywhere from a few thousand to sometimes upwards of 7 figures. But it's not just the money that's sort of, relative. It's arbitrary. It's also the mental and emotional fallout that comes with it. And we've seen stories involving, people lying, cheating, deceiving, stealing, endless credit, home equity, loans, the whole thing. And he couldn't wrap his head around it. And so we started talking about like, what does it actually look like to spend 5 figures in one sitting on whatnot? And basically what I explained was like, it's like QVC meets Twitch meets an auction house with like casino psychology layered in, right? There's no checkout friction, the fast auctions, the public attention, the hype, the scarcity, the system just designed to keep people tapping without thinking, right? High spenders get treated like these like VIPs in a casino. They get the shout outs, they get the freebies, and it sort of reinforces this whole concept of like, I'm special here feeling. Then you add the whole layer of like repacks and the wheel spins and the pull games and $500 a spin for a chance at hitting a $5,000 card. And it becomes straight gambling psychology, right? And so we spoke for an hour, and it was just a really, really meaningful and impactful conversation. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing that come to life.
That's incredible. I know anytime you talk with someone, something good comes out of it, and I'm hoping it'll be a great piece. I think you raise a couple important points, which are we don't talk about much or enough, right? Fill in the blank, which is impediments to the legitimacy of this, right? So I'm just like, if this was like Alcoholics Anonymous, right, or something like that, you're probably not doing a podcast. You're probably not fighting for legitimacy. You're not getting calls from reporters or editors or freelancers saying, hey, can I write about this weird thing where people get addicted to alcohol, right? Like, it is understood and accepted that is a risk and an epidemic in its own right, and that it's dangerous and so on and so forth, right? I think an impediment that this space faces is one, with what you just outlined, right? So it's a child's hobby, right? It's sports cards, it's cardboard, it's like, it can't possibly be as bad as, let's say, gambling. And I think the other, which is what makes it wholly unique, is that if I have a gambling problem or an alcohol problem, or some other vice or addiction that is dangerous, I can't sell my alcohol collection, right? Like, I can't turn around. So one of the inherent key dangers in this space is that most collectors or people who, let's say, aren't collecting intentionally or who've fallen to the dangers of that lack of guardrails, always sort of feel like, well, I can always sell the things I have, right? You do get something, like, even if it's bad or of little worth, to monetarily to other people, you have something. And so there's always this sort of background noise that's like, well, I can just kind of sell to recoup.
Right.
And it creates this cycle, of course, that is, I think, truly unique to this space, right? And something that we need to talk about, and that is an impediment to the legitimacy of getting changes made, so that we're not letting people fall prey to these things. And the three things that I wrote down about sort of this point is, the hobby sells universal upside, right?
Right.
No matter what, no matter where you are, no one's going to tell you, hey, don't buy into this break, it's garbage, right? The hobby sells universal upside. The math doesn't support universal wins. That's not the way this works. I kind of outlined that at the beginning, right? Printing will continue to happen year after year after year, whether you're in it or not, whether you're alive or not, like, you name it. The math does not support universal wins, and loss doesn't disappear. It lands on people, right? No matter what, the losses will land on people. Maybe it's not you this time, right? But it is going to land on someone.
Sure.
And maybe they can take it. Maybe they can take it this time. But I think it's important to remember, especially as we're talking about these impediments to sort of the legitimacy of this movement, or at least I am. You didn't bring it up, but I am. That I think it's really important that we all universally check in sometimes and say, hey, when someone spins that wheel for the $5,000 card, right, and then they hit the floor or whatever, right, they hit a $50 card, as it were, right, that is a loss, and it is landing on a real human being with a life just as vivid and involved and rich as yours, right? And they just took a loss, and it's important to stop and check in with that. And I think those things, again, I know that wasn't the direction you were necessarily going, but I think these things are
this is important.
Yeah.
This is really important stuff. Yeah, I mean, you said it perfectly. There's so many people that are out there.
What are the impediments that you've run up against, Alyx? If I could pose it to you, right? You've been the tip of the spear, the bulwark. I think Collectors MD is. I'd be curious, what have you run up against as far as impediments to legitimacy? Like, you just explained you had one, right? Is this real? Is this a real thing? Like, yeah, that person is one of thousands, right?
That I think is probably the biggest impediment, is that people just don't get it from the outside looking in. They just automatically assume that any adult should be able to function in a way that they're able to tell themselves just to stop. Okay, I've hit a wall. I've just spent the last couple $100 that I have in my checking account. I've just maxed out a credit card. I got to stop now. And what people don't realize is that gambling addiction, which is adjacent to this type of addiction, is a disease by nature. It's insidious. It destroys from the inside out. And it's not something that just goes away, right? And we talk about that at great length, both through the daily reflections, in our weekly meetings, even on this podcast. It's a real disease. And in order to overcome it, or at least, put it in remission, so to speak, it's a lifelong commitment. You really have to commit to a new lifestyle, a 12-step program. I mean, whether that be GA or, an outpatient, inpatient facility like, the one I work at Mondays and Tuesdays, Right Choice Recovery. We treat gambling addicts and, those with substance abuse. And, or Collectors MD, weekly meetings with us. I mean, like you need to layer in some sort of support, because what we can't do is heal by ourselves in isolation. And for the longest time in this hobby, in the collecting sphere, if you will, people were just dealing with these issues by themselves because there wasn't a platform, a space, for people to go to and connect with others. And so, yeah, I mean, Collectors MD bridges that gap. But, again, like it's all about spreading awareness, not just to the collectors, not just to the individuals who are in the hobby, but to those sort of on the outside looking in, whether it be somebody like, the freelance writer I met with this morning who's intrigued by all of this, or a parent who has a kid who goes to card shows and transacts with adults, right? And is trying the trade up challenge or whatever the case may be. We have to get the word out there that this is a real epidemic, and that while there are a lot of people that can, manage themselves responsibly and not spiral, there are also a lot of people that just very, very easily end up on that slippery slope, don't even realize that damage is being done until it's far too late. And so that's what it's all about. It's just about spreading awareness, educating, letting people know that they're not alone, that a space does exist, and that we can be there for them wherever they are, whenever, regardless of where they're at in their journey.
I love it. Yeah, I think that's key, right? I mean, everything I just posited to you kind of exists independent of Collectors MD, and that's what makes this space special.
Yeah, man.
It exists regardless of whether people want to recognize it or not. And
yeah, I mean, the whole concept is like you can love something deeply and still demand it gets healthier, right? And that's the whole concept of rip responsibly and intentional collecting and everything we preach. Now, of course, there are folks that are going to have to take a break, whether it be temporarily or permanently. They can no longer have that healthy relationship with collecting or spending. Maybe they need to turn their finances over to a loved one. Maybe they need to self-exclude somehow, some way. But there are people who can no longer be involved in the hobby. And so we have a lane for those people, which we call abstinence. And that, sort of branch of Collectors MD is growing rapidly. Obviously, the majority of our community sits within this sort of intentional collecting vertical where, people just want to engage with the hobby more responsibly and just more mindfully. But again, there are people that, harm reduction doesn't work for them and they need to abstain completely. And so again, we want to honor that and meet people wherever they are in their collecting journeys, their recovery, whatever the case may be. So with that, we're going to transition over to our second segment, which is the zero-sum reality, when someone has to lose for you to win, which we've already sort of touched on. And so this is the idea you shared that really stuck with me. The hobby markets itself like everyone can win, right? All we see on the highlight reels are the big hits, right? Like Cooper Flag everywhere with the Topps Chrome release, Topps Chrome Sapphire. We saw the Superfractor Auto. We saw the how do you pronounce it? Pad Paradasha, the Papa.
Oh yeah, whatever.
The one of one out of Sapphire that was recently hit. And so again, like all we see are the highlights. And so I think, the math often says otherwise, right? So walk people through your sort of zero thumb thought, and why it stuck with you after, we had that conversation.
Yeah, it's when you start selling, and I'm a collector first and then a seller second, right? And I tell people this all the time at shows. I sell so that I can continue to collect, right? I sell so that I can buy something that I want or I like or that interests me. And I think, I think the key component around learning this sort of zero sum mentality in the hobby space is that you, at least for me, I'm encountering less and less of sort of the intentional collectors, or just like what the hobby knows as collectors, right? We need collectors for this to continue to survive and thrive, whether they want to say it or not. Like manufacturers, distributors, they need collectors. Collectors have to exist. They are the bread and butter, and at the end of the day, they are what makes the income. And the more you sort of immerse yourself in the like selling online, doing card shows, that kind of thing, the more it's easier to become cynical, because everyone is focused on what can I get out of it, right? Not this is for me. What can I get out of it? And um, you said someone in our group mentioned, being really deep in a hole and then selling, being able to flip this card for a ton of money on eBay, and the buyer, eventually trying to back out, and it turns out I think they were a kid or something like that, right? And it's, we're all wired a little differently. I'm deeply, deeply, deeply empathetic, right? I tend to feel for people to a unhealthy degree, and the natural inclination within the hobby is to dump on that person, right? Like, oh, you shouldn't have bought it then. What an idiot, right? Like, that's too bad, so sad, right? Like, you have to live with your decisions. And all I can think about is a person on the other end who is like, oh my God, I just radically overextended myself and made a huge mistake. And how much that hurts is someone who's not, I'm not shy about how much, I've struggled with mental health, and how much, therapeutic services has helped me, and the people in my life who have mental health issues. And I was thinking about both sides of that, right? From a zero sum perspective, the person that sold that card really needed it to sell. They needed it to get out of the hole, and I wanted that for them in this anecdote, right? And the
Right.
person that bought it, they, effectively, as far as we know, they really wanted that card. It was really cool to them, whether as a collector or as someone who was going to flip it. But they bought it and then immediately realized it was a huge mistake and they overextended. Both things are true, right?
Mhm.
And ultimately, nobody's winning, right? Nobody's winning there. And that isn't to say that it's a universal applicable truth, right? There isn't just zero sum in the hobby, but no matter where you churn, no matter where you buy, if we want people to buy at scale, there's no real way, I would argue, to do that intentionally, right? I can't attend or I can't go to a Twitter show. Like, I do a lot of buying and selling on Twitter, which I think is, maybe we can get to that. It's I think one of the healthier spaces for the hobby. But one of the dangers is people will run, say, a 5-day sale where for 4 hours they're posting cards, right? And by the end, you're like, whoa, I bought 100 cards and now I owe $1,000, right? It's like there's no real way to go about that intentionally. And all I can think about is the downstream effects. Where did that person get those cards, right? Did they have to get one over the person they bought it from? Did the person they bought it from, did they buy a bunch of retail boxes and realize they were in debt and then just flip them to this person? Or was it, are we continuing this cycle? And it causes me to stop and sort of reframe the entire thing, right? Where I think there's no perfect answer. So that's the key component, right? There's no perfect answer, and I understand for many people this is a business, this is a money making venture, and that's okay. However, as long as I'm selling, the goal is always going to be, and this may be a U line, right? But the goal is going to be aligned expectations on whomever's buying and whomever's selling. That is how we both win, not just profit, right? Profit's great. Don't get me wrong, it's cool. If I buy a card for cheap and then that player goes off, cool, right? And everybody wins. But I think, and you mentioned this too, right? Fairness doesn't mean harmless, right? There's always someone on the other end that is buying that thing, buying into it, buying a lot of it, or just buying the thing. And it doesn't, just because they bought it, just because even if they had the money to buy it, doesn't mean that that is harmless. There are downstream effects of that. And I think my like, and we're going to talk about sort of the ethical component of it is, but like being a steward in the hobby and a steward of other collectors and these goods and the sports that they represent, I think it means occasionally pausing and trying to think about, am I doing the right thing, right? This person's coming back and buying $5,000 a week or whatever. Let's check in and make sure that that's healthy, or what the reason is for that. And if they tell me to kick rocks, okay, right? But I'm going to take that step, that towards step, to try and at least whittle down some of that zero sum reality that I think exists within the hobby and is dangerous, right? It means there's always going to be a loser, and it means that there's always going to be bodies in the wake of the hobby. No matter where it
Right.
goes, that wake's going to exist, and Collectors MD is going to be dragging behind that boat, right? Picking up all those bodies. And I want to get to a point where we're minimizing that as much as possible.
Right. Yeah. All makes complete sense. And it's very logical. I mean, it doesn't take a genius or a rocket scientist to understand everything you just explained. I mean, we're talking about very simple, economics here. Like, and this is something we keep coming back to. Is whether people this in this hobby actually pause to acknowledge that there's a person on the other side of the transaction, right? Not just the username, not just the comp or the margin, but a real human being on the other end of that decision, right? And so when people are going back and forth on eBay and just trying to, you know, haggle or nickel and dime and get the most out of a transaction, whether it be on the buying or selling side, you all have to realize you're dealing with a human, not just like a username in an app. And the same thing applies across all platforms. And I think that directly ties into this idea of both sides walking away winners. And so I'm curious how you define that in practice. What does that actually look like when it's done right? Is it about transparency? Is it about fair expectations? Is it long-term trust? Or is the idea of two real winners in the same deal kind of a myth in today's hobby environment?
Yeah, it's a good question. Like I said, there's no perfect answer. I don't think there's a perfect answer, and I think, and this is the key, right? That there's only a few ways in which this actually becomes material change. And one of those is regulation, which is one of my favorite hobby horses, and another one is like interpersonal, like taking it upon ourselves in an interpersonal relationship or environment to be that change.
Right.
And so I think I like to believe that I am acting, in again, I use a lot of therapeutic language because it's been a part of my life forever, right?
Sure.
And I think in selling, I am always trying to make those towards moves, right? Those moves towards that we're both winning, that I'm selling intentionally, you're collecting intentionally. And that doesn't mean I don't sell to someone that's just like a naked flipper, or this is for my whatnot store or whatever, right? I will sell to whomever. But I think the key is, or at least the key for me, is sort of what I outlined at the beginning, right? Which is sort of being open, honest, transparent. Um, this is what I have. This is what I have into it, or this is what I need to get for it, or um, I'm very old school in that there's very few people I've ever sold a card to that I don't know something about, even at a card show, right? I will dig in and I will get to know them. Oh, you're buying Ozzie Smith because you're a huge fan, because your dad made you a fan when you were 8 years old, and right, whatever it is. Well, like then this Ozzie Smith RPA or patch auto or whatever, it belongs with you. And I think that's sort of the key, at least from a small or micro scale or macro scale, excuse me, to selling in a way such that there are two winners. I also think, like in the nature of sales, that zero sum doesn't work long term, right? So if you make a habit of ripping people off or whatever it is, right? We see it all the time. Then you are going to consistently lose the base of people that you sell to, you interact with, that make up the hobby. And hopefully that is a price you pay for it, or hopefully you can learn that lesson without sort of losing those components. But oftentimes that is the case. And I think, there's the selling side, which or the sort of micro selling side, which is me, right? I'm a very, very, very small fish. And then there's the sort of the larger side, right? The 30,000 foot picture side. And that is everything that, I've advocated for, right? Which is open and honest odds, actual print numbers, the key components around expectations with products, what to expect. I think there's this myth out there. If we want to talk about myths, there's this myth that like it's a waste of money, right? To buy sort of like, let's say to walk into a Walmart and buy a retail product versus saving a little money and buying a hobby box or whatever it is. And I think that the myth amongst manufacturers or that at least exists in that sphere, whether they hold it or not, is that, being transparent about the information that goes into their product, when it's coming out, how much is being printed, what is what, where it's being distributed, which is another huge battle. I think they're concerned that would sort of cause sales to dive in certain aspects. And I actually think the opposite would happen, right? Which is the more open and honest and transparent we are. I know I'm buying a retail product. The odds of hitting something are low, but that's why I'm buying it, right? I want to I want to collect intentionally. I want that neat Clifford, rookie card. Doesn't have to be an auto, doesn't have to be some monster hit, but I know that, my chances of getting it are perfectly fine in this retail product. And if I want to go, whale hunting, I can do that. There's 1,000,001 places to be able to do that. And so I think that, there's a number of regulatory ways, and that there's a number of sort of interpersonal ways to go about it. I think being open, honest, and a good steward of both, the product and the people you're selling to is the best way to keep those expectations aligned. And we both walk away feeling like, this was a victory, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And this is where Collectors MD, lands pretty firmly. Intentional selling, intentional buying, intentional collecting is part of our version of harm reduction. So with that, we're going to transition over to our next segment, which is the ethics of selling, the LCS as an ethical sommelier, as you like to call it, right?
Yeah.
Could you break that down? Like, what should shops and sellers be doing differently?
Yeah. So, like, I don't know if this is a framework that exists out there, right? But I think of a sommelier, which is funny because like I've never been to a restaurant that was fancy enough to have a sommelier. I don't even drink. But I think we all understand what a sommelier is, right? Which is like someone that's a wine expert that helps you, choose wines to either go with meals or just for drinking, whatever it is, right? But they're an expert in that field. That is what we expect from LCSs. Yes, absolutely. But also, I think there's a degree of fairness to expect that from anyone we're buying something from, absent sort of the caveats that they give. And I think an ethical sommelier is a lot of the things we just outlined, right? So they are a steward of the experience, and that doesn't mean that doesn't just mean when you come into my shop, check out this banger Cougar Flag 101, right? It is, what do you collect, right? Not what are you hunting for? This one's you should go for this one because there's good margin to be made here. This guy's popping off, right? It is, what do you collect? What connects you to the hobby? Why did you begin to care about this? And in coming full circle, right? It's like I almost want to tap into that childlike aspect of the hobby again, right? You did not collect Michael Jordan in the 80s because you were like, dude, this whatever 86 Fleer is going to be worth $1 billion. You collect it because you were like, Michael Jordan is the GOAT. It is. I love watching him play. It's so cool that I have this rookie card of his, right? I feel really good about it. What are we doing to help connect people with what they collect and not just like how they go about buying, selling, moving on? Are we respecting a budget, right? And so that's another component which is becoming increasingly difficult because the hobby is pricing people out. But are we respecting their budget when they say, hey, I've got $25, right? And I want to buy something. Are we being like a sommelier would do that, right? They wouldn't say, well, this is $8,000 a bottle, but so you'll have to take out a second home equity loan or whatever, right? Like they would say, these are the options we have available for you. This one's great, right? The same thing applies to transparency. inclusivity. So like, are we being honest about like, am I going to hit something crazy out of this box? Likely not. And but that's also not the idea, right?
Right.
Hopefully we've established by now that you are collecting intentionally, and then bringing that integrity to the table, right? Like, are you, I see this a lot, which with LCSs, and I hope it's not an epidemic, but I see a lot of people who I'm just going to speak colloquially now, who don't know ball, right? At LCSs, where I will walk in and be like, hey, do you have any whatever NFL optic or something like that? And they're like, I don't know what that is. Or do you know, is Ashton Genty in this year's NFL optic? I don't even know who that is, right? Aren't you the sports card guy? And it's okay, right? Like, it's okay for people to not know things. I want to be clear about that. It's perfectly okay. However, part of that role should be a desire to help educate yourself even further so that you can bring that integrity and be like, yeah, I know he's in it because I am also a part of this, and I opened some packs, or I collect, whatever it is I collect, Brian Thomas Jr., and he was in last year's. And I think that's a key integrity piece that is part of being that ethical sommelier of both an LCS and selling in general. And I think if I were to wrap it up in like a bow, it's understanding that you are a steward of the products, and also of someone's experience of it when you're a seller. So like, when you're selling, you are responsible for their experience with the product, whether that's, I'm selling you a $5,000 Kaboom, or I'm selling you this $3, base paper rookie because you love this player.
Sure.
It's your job to get there, and to also do it in this respectful manner that shows you to be a steward in the space.
Right. It's all about guidance, not pressure. Right. And I think, that really matters in a hobby where so much of the excitement is just centered around manufactured hype cycles, artificial scarcity, the countdown timers, the last box language. All of it is designed to create this sense of urgency instead of true understanding, right? When scarcity is real, it's one thing, but when it's engineered, when supply is intentionally framed to feel smaller, faster, more exclusive than it actually is, it stops being about helping someone make a good decision and just starts being about steering the behavior, right?
Yep.
And that's where I think a lot of collectors, especially the newer ones, end up losing their footing. And so having that ethical sommelier or steward is so important, right? It's someone who slows the room down, right? Someone who explains the risks alongside the upside. Someone who says, here's what you're paying for, here's what you're actually getting or likely to get, and here's why this might or might not make sense for you for a number of reasons that are tailored to that specific collector. Not someone just hyping it up, but someone helping you understand whether it's even your taste, right? So how do you think about walking new collectors through risk versus reward, especially when hype is doing most of the talking these days?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I think I covered a lot of risk and reward, and it draws me back to something you talked about earlier, right? Which is, what do you see when you like open whatever, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or any of these apps, right? You see the 1-on-1 Cooper flag auto, and you're like, whoa, sweet, that could have been me, right? And I don't remember the psychological phenomena or exactly what it's called, but it's called something to the effect of the flashbulb effect, which is like, we see what was captured in that millisecond when the flash was on, right? And it's drawn from this desire of other. It was created by social media, where it's like, look at the Johnsons, right? They're all so happy on Facebook, and they're going on another trip, and yada yada yada, right? You're seeing moments, like literal seconds of moments, that are captured, that don't have any context, that don't capture the before, the after, sometimes even the during, right? And it's important to remember that, because we have this, we compare ourselves to one another, we compare ourselves to other people, we compare ourselves to what we think we should be, and the hobby is absolutely no different. And so I've had some friends get into the hobby recently, and I am regularly, one of the like sort of playful things that I do is like open your camera roll, right? Scroll through there and tell me how many things pop out at you like a one of one card does, right? No, it's full of crap, right? Or random stuff. Here's a picture of my shoe because I want to remember it, right? Like whatever it is, right? Here's a picture of my mail day of a $5 card or what, that is the reality of collecting in the modern age, and of being in the hobby. And I also, so this is again, this is kind of an aside, but like if you buy into a break, like let's say you buy into a case break, they always have a spot, right, for the hits. And I encourage people, and you'll see streamers and breakers are very deliberate about this, right? Look at the other piles, right? And they get them off screen pretty quick. But if you could see the piles and piles and piles and piles of cards that did not make that showcase, right? The trophy stand, if you will, it kind of brings you back to reality a little bit, right? Which is the odds are overwhelming that you are not going to be that featured card, that one thing.
Yeah.
And it's okay if you are. Awesome. That's that's great. I'm happy for you. I want to be that too, right?
Yeah.
But it's important to remember that you are more than likely going to be in that pile. And I just want to remind you, every single card in that pile is the exact same shape, size, design. They're
Card
all
stock. Yeah.
identical to the one that's up there that's like, $1 billion card, right? But
Topps or Panini just printed something shiny on it.
They don't have the value, right? And then the last thing is, and again, this is more an interpersonal thing, right? Which is celebrating victories, right? Like meeting people where they are and celebrating the fun. So if you have a friend who's opened a product, right? And I've had some recently, they're like, I got this box from Costco, and I'm like, what'd you get? Like, show me what you got, right? And like bringing the enthusiasm. No one's been like, I got this box and I hit this, Jaden Daniels 101 downtown. That has not happened because that's the flashbulb effect. It's going to be 1 in a billion. But like, I got this, whatever it is, right? I got a Jackson Dart rookie base, and I got, these things and this insert. Those are awesome, man. I'm super pumped for you. Those are sick. Do you have sleeves? Do you have top loaders? You got to save those. Those are really cool. And those are going to be something, you're going to want to remember, hopefully, if that player becomes great or whatever it is, right? So again, it's going that 50%, sometimes 51%, and meeting people with enthusiasm and celebrating even the small stuff.
Absolutely.
That's not, that's not necessarily the big whoppers. I think that's the most important. Like, we're not addressing risk necessarily, right? But it's getting people to sort of buy into the value proposition that exists in the hobby and lean more into the intentional piece, which is all about Collectors MD, right?
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well said. So I have 2 more questions on this segment. I'm going to combine them just so that we can kind of hit the turbo button here a little bit. We still have 3 more segments and we're almost at an hour. So I just want to be conscious of that. So where is the actual line between business and exploitation? And on another note, what are the biggest red flags you see at shows or shops? And what would a healthier version of those moments look like?
Yeah. As far as the hard line, the red line, it's a good question. I don't know that I know, right? I think you said red line, business and exploitation, right?
Yeah. What is the actual, where is the actual line between business and exploitation?
I don't know that one exists, right? I think if a tree falls in the forest and no one's around to see it, doesn't make a noise, right? I think it takes someone to be able to actually be looking to be able to identify that. Doesn't mean exploitation's not happening, right? The tree still falls and does make a noise. But I think we have to be looking, and that's, again, I know it's a cop-out answer, but that's part of why I'm here, right? That's why I'm at Collectors MD, because we are looking. My eyes are peeled, and when I see it, I'm gonna call it out.
Sure.
So I don't think there's a clear this, but I think it's on all of us to be able to point it out. And even if that brings heat, right? Even if you're like calling someone out publicly, like, hey, this guy is, exploiting you or whatever it is, and that brings a whole rash of heat. Do it in line with your values.
Right. Yeah. And then the other question was, what are the biggest red flags you see at shows or shops? And what would a healthier version of those moments look like? And while you answer that, Paul, I'm just going to turn off my camera for a moment here.
Sure.
And mute myself, but you could start answering and I'll be right back.
You won't see my eyes rolling. So it's very specific examples, right? So I have very specific hallmarks that I look for at shows and shops. to sort of identify exploitative behavior. And the biggest one is like showcase cards. So that's cards within a case, either on a table at a show or, in a glass case at a store. Is it like a base card or a base insert card, but of a player that's super popular right now? And as such, it's priced maybe 3 times the market value. So whatever that might be, right? Like an insert of Shohei Ohtani that is a $20 card, but they put it in a mag case and they put it in the middle of their showcase and they have it priced at 60, 75 bucks, right? I have been around the hobby long enough to be able to identify that on site, but I encourage everyone to take a random sampling and check the prices on them. And I know for a fact when I go to a shop or a show and I see something like that, I will immediately say, okay, you're not for me, right? Anyone that's willing to do that is looking for a mark, right? You're looking for someone you can exploit to be able to sell your product. And that's, again, it's a very specific example of the biggest red flag, right? But to me, I think it's a very clear one, which is like find a few things. If they're way out of whack just based on hype, then I would say move on, right? This person is looking to ride the hype wave. Yeah, that's great. And that's fine. We all do it. But also they're looking to exploit novice collectors or people without as much knowledge. And that's not someone who's worth your business, let alone anyone else's. You don't necessarily have to call it out. Sometimes I will, and I'm cool with that. But I think that's your cue to be like, hey, thanks for letting me look. Have a great show and move on.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not being anti-business. It's being pro-consumer.
Yes.
And I think that's something, a lot of people in the hobby are still struggling to sort of reconcile. So
we talked about it a lot. The deck's stacked against you, right?
Yeah, exactly. It always is.
Yeah.
We're going to transition over to our next segment, which is streaming, breaking, and the always on trap. So a lot of modern hobby behaviors is app based. It's high frequency. It's always on 24/7, right? And like just having that unlimited access can be super dangerous. And the mechanisms matter more than the label. So what do you see on breaking or streaming platforms that, really feel gambling shaped, even if people resist that comparison?
Yeah, everything. I mean, the so I don't think again, ostensibly breaking is gambling, right? And I know that
by definition, absolutely.
Most people in the hobby want to avoid labels like that, but like, I'm sorry, man, it is, right? Like I can't. Opening a pack of cards is like a micro form of gambling. We do not know what's in there and we've spent money for it. Just because you end up with something at the end doesn't mean you didn't put $15 on black, right? It is still the same exercise that happens. So I think understanding that at the onset, it's just hard, right? And I know even if Collectors MD, maybe that isn't like, point number 1 in the bulletin. For me personally, that's a key component of understanding involvement in the hobby, collecting whatever it is anywhere. You are gambling, period, the end, right? And you're also gambling with an asset that, like, we wouldn't be talking if I had a giant Wander Franco collection, right? As I'm sure some people did, because I would be, living in a shanty. You're also gambling on assets you have absolutely no control over.
Right.
And so
it's more volatile than the stock market. You don't know if somebody's going to get injured or run into a scandal like Wander did, like.
Right. Ask Bo Nix, right? Like, or ask the Broncos. It happens. Life happens. Things happen. And that is, every time that happens, I remind people that is why you collect with intention, right?
Yeah.
I would still buy Bo Nix because I love him as a player, as a person, what he does in the community, what he represents, whatever it is, right? I think as far as the apps are concerned, we understand that it's gambling in the onset. I think there's just too much obfuscation, right? So I rarely, if ever, go in anymore. But now when I do, I'm like, how does anyone understand this, right?
Right.
Even just buying in, I'll go to a channel and it's like, cool, this break is 1 sapphire box, maybe, kind of, but I've also got this other stuff over here, and it's a mini break. I'm also filling this 4th break, which is like 3 products and also whatever's in my sock drawer, right? Like, it's just, everything is obfuscation. It's all weird. You're buying a random team, so now you're like spinning a wheel. So there's chance on chance on chance involved. I think, like, we need clarity in that way, right? Like, I think if I were to wave a magic wand, that would all change instantly. That would change overnight. It would be clear. It'd be concise. It'd be one break at a time. There would be, there'd be guardrails. This makes me sound like almost like a monk or something, right? But like I think, at least like locally, I think there's a healthiness around. Let's make it 9 to 5, right? Like let's make it a 9 to 5 thing, so that we're not feeding this need to have product all the time or create a break out of nothingness, which happens a lot too. And then beyond that, we need clear and concise odds. And I know that's probably never going to happen because casinos don't have them listed anywhere. And if we didn't get to them, we're probably not getting to the hobby. But every single time you join a digital platform to buy into something, it really should show you odds by the minute, right? What are your odds to get X team? What are your odds to get something out of this product, right? Maybe I can query it, whatever it is, right? But we know the numbers. They are out there. They exist. They are being withheld from you on purpose. Not always from the breaker, right? But someone knows those numbers. And so the fact that consumers are unaware of it, just I think it's gasoline on the fire, right? It tends to exacerbate the issue of gambling on these digital platforms, because it feels easier and easier, as you said at the onset, right? Well, I'm just going to click this button and buy in, and then now I've spent $500 and I don't know what happened, and I don't even know what I hit, and I don't know what's in the product, right? All of that sort of curtails into my point about stewardship, but I think those are necessary points for the digital platforms, especially.
Right. Yeah, I want to take a moment real quick and sort of break down what the process is, because we've talked about this quite a bit, is layers within layers, gambling within gambling, right? And I think it's one thing a lot of people underestimate is how hard it actually is to hit a big card that ends up on that that trophy display during a break, right? Especially let's just use a random player break as an example. On the surface, it feels simple, right? You get a random player, you hope for the best. But when you break it down, the odds get brutal really, really fast. First, you have to hit the right player, right? Out of, let's say, a modern checklist of 300 plus names. So before we even talk about the autos or the low numbered parallels or anything exciting, you're already swimming in a pretty massive pool just to see your guy show up, right?
Yep.
Then let's say you do hit the right player. That doesn't mean you've hit anything meaningful. The card that comes out still has to be a parallel or a short print or an auto, something that actually moves the needle. Base cards, don't change the equation for most people, because most
Right.
people aren't collecting with intention. They're just trying to hit that big card. Now zoom out to a real example. Say you buy into a 2-case break, 20 total boxes. This is a format that a lot of breakers are running right now with Topps Chrome Sapphire. They're 10-box cases. They're running random players because it's such an expensive product and the average collector has been priced out. They're going for $5,000-$6,000 a box now. So they're doing these random player breaks, $300 a player. Each box has 3 parallels and an auto, right?
Yep.
If we're talking about a 2-case break, that's about 80 total hits across the entire break. So for everything to go right, one of those 80 hits has to be your player. And remember, that's after you've already beaten the odds of pulling the right name out of a 300 plus player checklist in the first place.
Right.
And so when you frame it that way, it's not about being negative or killing the fun. It's about being honest and realistic. These breaks aren't built for consistency or for you to hit. They're built on long odds and rare outcomes. And without someone slowing that down, it's really easy for hype to replace reality. Right? We're talking about glorified scratch offs. We're talking about playing a game of roulette, but instead of having 36 numbers on the wheel, you have 300, right? And not only do you have to hit the right number, you have to then see what the contents of the box or the cases produce, right? And hope that your number comes out of that box. So it's layered risk. It's just a gamble within a gamble. And
it's
then
also assuming random sampling of distribution as well, right?
Yeah,
like the 300 player checklist pre-assumes that like the manufacturer, Topps in this case, is randomly distributing them perfectly in packs and boxes and cases, right? Which we don't know because they don't always tell us.
Right. Yeah, and it's gotten to a point where people lose sight of the reality there because of how it's marketed and how it's presented to the average consumer, the average user, by these breakers, which are essentially like dealers at a casino, right?
Yep.
Except the casino dealers playing the role of the marketer and the entertainer and driving this sense of FOMO and urgency, like you have to get in. This is a, once in a lifetime opportunity for you to hit a massive card that could change everything. Like, let's be realistic. The people that are actually hitting those big cards, they're probably buying a dozen, maybe a couple dozen spots at $300 a pop.
Mm-hmm.
They're barely getting their money back, even if they do hit that big card. If they're making, so the whole thing is just it's not realistic.
Yeah.
It's just
I-
it's ridiculous.
I've been trying to and this is so ridiculous and petty, but like I've been trying to sort of remove myself and anything I'm involved with from this sort of gambling adjacent activity. So in the last year, at card shows, I will regularly have people or kids who will be negotiating on something, right? And then they want to flip, all right? So they want to flip a coin. Okay, well, we'll flip a coin, heads your price, tails my price,
Yeah.
right?
See it
And
all the time.
right, it's pretty common. And to your point, we're gambling on gambling on gambling at that point, right? Like we are full inception mode. We're in dreams within dreams. And I have just taken to being like, no, I don't do that, right? Like I'm not going to gamble you more. Do you want to flip the coin and then spin a wheel and then go find a 4-leaf clover and then see if the groundhog finds a shadow? Like where do we end?
For somebody like you who's selling at a card show, that's a lose-lose scenario, because if you win the coin flip, your customer walks away unhappy. If you lose the coin flip, you don't get the price you want. So there's no positive outcome there.
Yeah.
Right?
And with children especially,
Children
I
especially.
think we need to I think we need to do better at diverting away from this, because
Right.
it's
And you
antagonistic to intentional collecting.
I love that you compared it to like Inception, and that's 100% what it is. And we haven't even gotten into, the razzes and the fillers and the micro fillers and all these other shenanigans that a lot of these breakers implement into the whole process. Oh, you can get into this break on a filler and then hit the card of a lifetime. Like your odds are longer than a 12 leg parlay. Like, let's be real, right?
Yep.
So again, collecting with intention, knowing what you're getting yourself into, being educated and aware of your surroundings and the environment, all so incredibly important. Now, why do you think, Paul, so many people defend these ecosystems, not just the sellers and the breakers, but even the collectors and the buyers, even after they've been burnt by them?
It's so I mean the first answer is money, right? It's good money. The hobby has been on a steady growth trajectory for a decade and a half, right? There's money to be made, and people are going to protect that at all costs. I mean, if we know anything about human psychology, we know that to be true. The other thing that we know about human psychology is that that could be me, right? So I'm going not to get political, but like I'm going to vote for lower taxes on billionaires because maybe I'll be a billionaire soon, right?
Sure.
That'll be me someday, right? And I think that it's the same psychology that portends the folks that have been burned but are still okay with it, right? Because it's like that I'll get there, right? I'm going to hit a few things and I'm going to build out a thing, and I know better than everyone, including the manufacturers and all the sports executives and every other long odd in existence. I know better than them. I'm going to come out on top, and when I do, I want to make sure these things are still in place so that I can make money. And that's just not the case, right? It's we've talked about this before, and I think those are my reasons for why I think it exists. I think what I would tell people, right, what I would emphasize with folks is that it is absolutely no difference whatsoever from a casino where the odds are not in your favor no matter what, right? The house always wins. And that is the case here. The house always, always, always wins. Now, the same thing applies, which is that buyers have some responsibility. And we understand that. I wish that they would bear that responsibility within the constraints of guardrails and regulations, but that's not the way the world is right now. I just tell people to approach it exactly like that, right? When you go to Vegas, I don't really gamble, but when you unless you count cards, in which case I gamble a lot. When you go to Vegas, right? You spend the money, but like the way I was raised, right? It's not like I'm going to Vegas and spend this money, I'm gonna come home with 10 grand or whatever, right? It was, I'm going to spend $500 or whatever it is, and hopefully get 25 hours of entertainment out of that $500, right? I'm not going to have the money in the end, but hopefully I got some joy and entertainment out of it. And that is how I tell people to approach the hobby, from pretty much every angle right now, unless you're just kind of buying the singles for your collection and you're not really looking to make money in any way, shape, or form. You should be treating it as you're throwing the money towards entertainment, and hopefully you got some joy, fun, engagement out of it, but you're not getting that money back, right?
Right.
And that you need to be okay with that if you're going to be an engaged and informed and intentional buyer and collector. I think those are the key components with why it continues to be allowed. There's also, there's systemic power structures at play. There's all, like, again, I look at it, we talked about how different it is from gambling and other addictions and vices and its legitimacy, but when you break it all down at the end of the day, like, the money that resides at the top of all these power structures are pretty darn similar. So if we're going to talk about changing the hobby, it's really no different than talk about changing any other, massive, like gambling, alcohol, tobacco, any other psychological vice, right? There are huge power structures at play, and we're steering a giant ship that is not done, quickly or easily.
So this question is really important, and I think it kind of ties everything together for this segment. How do we talk about this without sounding antagonistic or just yelling addiction at everyone?
Yeah, I think if I've developed any theme, it's this move towards interpersonal relationships within the space. I think that's key. I think what I haven't flagged is recognizing when they're not real, because it is something that you hit, which is they will use it to prey on you, right? Attention, or you're a VIP or whatever it is, right? They will use that to prey on you further. I think that, there's a healthy way to go about collecting, and I think what we need to do, so that we're not, to your point, screaming at the clouds or clutching pearls from our porch and yelling, looking like we're yelling at people, which I don't think any of us are doing, is to perhaps elevate those folks who are doing it right. Yeah. So that's one of my favorite things about shows, right? I have regulars, and then I have new people. I have I thought about this prior to the show, right? So there's one guy that always buys from me. His name is Six. That is his name. So he
Six, like the number?
His name is Six, yes. So he collects players that wear the number 6. And
Okay.
he collects serial numbers that have 6 in it, right? I can think of no better reason to intentionally collect something than my name is 6, I collect the number, right? Like, I love finding
I love that.
like that, right?
I think I'm going to start collecting players that have Y in their name.
Why not, right? Like, hey, or that spell their name wrong like you do, right?
Exactly.
So, I think, what we need, what would best serve us is elevating those examples and use cases in lieu of, changing those entire power structures and sounding like crazies, is elevating those stories, right? This is someone that's collecting intentionally. They do it healthfully. They sell with integrity. They act as a steward of the hobby, but also they love whatever it is that you get without shame, right? They love this 5th starter on a team that's been in the league 13 years, or they're a big Yusei Kikuchi collector or whatever, right? No one really cares about Yusei Kikuchi, and that's fine, right? But they love that guy, and that's what they collect. That's awesome, right? Let's elevate those people and remind folks that is what it's about, right?
Yeah.
That's what the hobby's ultimately here for.
Yeah. That's where collect with intention, not compulsion, not impulse, becomes a neutral entry point instead of an accusation or calling people out. You made me think of something that actually is interesting, where you have collectors who are interested in maybe a player that is a college legend at their alma mater but didn't really pan out in the NFL. Think Tim Tebow or Johnny Manziel, right? Johnny Football. These are guys that still sell incredibly well. Why? Because I think manufacturers start to notice, oh, well, there are a handful of people that are collecting with intention. A lot of people like Tim Tebow for a variety of reasons outside of his success as a pro. we're going to start producing more of him. We're going to insert him into the manga set for the latest Prism draft picks. And I don't know if you've seen comps, but Tim Tebow, Johnny Football, those guys sell for thousands of dollars. Like when they showed the preview and Tim Tebow, doing the Tim Tebow kneel or whatever, manga photo, I was like, I need that card, and I'm sure I could get it for cheap. Sure enough, no, that card costs thousands of dollars. So like it's interesting that manufacturers are maybe starting to notice folks, and those that are collecting with intention, or collecting more abstract or far-fetched type of players or cards, and kind of capitalizing on that by making it mainstream.
I could take it 1 degree further too, which is not what you were going for, but that is like collecting players who are good human beings, right? Who are human beings that you respect or aspire to, or whatever it is, right? He hits the ball really hard, or he dribbles ball good, whatever, like great, right? But maybe you're really into someone, like I look at the NFL's Walter Payton Man of the Year award, right? And if you look at nominees from every team, about half of them and half of them you don't, right? And they are being recognized as being like incredible stewards of the community and good people and so on and so forth. Maybe look a little deeper and try and find and collect people that are on your favorite team, or otherwise aligned, that you respect, or you like what they do in the community, you like what they stand for, whatever that is. Find that extra degree that kind of makes it intentional and a little less compulsive.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people feel that way about a player like, I don't know, Jameis Winston. Very likable guy, does good things in the community. Isn't like the best player in the world, kind of, I would say probably a bust if we're talking about success as a number 1 overall pick, but like just a really stand-up dude that people like. I do want to just take a moment to share my screen again. These are some of the comps of that Tebow card. Yeah, I mean, this is crazy, right? Like,
ouch. Yikes.
Yeah, I mean, he sells just as well as, I mean, look, baseball kaboom on the Mets, unlicensed. This is from 2018.
Interesting.
So, yeah. Anyway, I don't want to get us too off track here, because we're already an hour 20 in, which is great, and we're having a really, really fantastic conversation here. So, let's switch over to our next segment. We have 2 left. This one is community guardrails, faster help when someone is spiraling. So one thing you flagged that really hit home for me was response time. That posting for help often isn't enough. So when you saw that Discord situation that I'm referencing, what did it make you realize about how support actually works in real time?
Yeah, it's I think there's a lot of different ways, right? There aren't a lot of ways, or aren't a lot of directions in which you can turn. And I don't mean for this to be like a self-congratulatory thing, but I think collector MD's notoriety and your willingness to sort of be out in front, have the conversations, push content everywhere you can, right? And sometimes it might feel like screaming into the void, but it matters, right? So it's important. And I think what I noticed immediately was like, oh, this lends legitimacy. This was someone that clearly understood what I was going through, right? Was a human response to my human question, knew I was struggling, and was able to sort of meet me where I was, right? Which is, and this is a key, and it's key everywhere in psychology as well, which is like, there's no shame, right? Shame is one of, if not the most powerful emotions that humans can feel, and can make you do extreme things. And so there's no shame in that need to reach out, or to find someone. And that's what I got when I reached out initially to you and the organization, right? I got that response that was thoughtful, that was not canned, right? It was clearly someone that sat down. I thought, man, someone sat down and read what I wrote, and then spent time out of their life to write a response to me. And that was incredibly meaningful. And even if I no longer had a problem or didn't need it anymore, right? It was, I want to make sure that I'm repaying that kindness and doing what I can. And that's what I got. That's what I got out of reaching out. And I can, like I said at the onset, right? I think I sent like 5 messages to 5 people. Not a single other human being responded. And I think that's what sort of makes Collectors MD unique. I think it lends it legitimacy, not that it needs it, but that's what you get from sort of reaching out when you need it.
Absolutely, man. Appreciate you saying that. And that's what it's all about. It's we'll get to a point where like the demand exceeds, my bandwidth, but the whole purpose here is for us to grow the community so that we can have other folks involved in shaping the direction we're headed in and providing that support. And I think people like you, people like, Brandon, Collector Charles, Sean. I mean, there's a handful of community members who have already been actively involved in paying it forward, helping us shape what we're creating here.
Yes.
Travis and his wife, Ombre, who have been on the show. So yeah, man, staying on that topic, if we could design, and let's call it an acute response system, what would it include?
I think, well, I'm going to sound like a broken record, right? So I think it's meeting people where they are. I think it's lots of entry points. So accessibility, and that is in the literal and sort of performative sense of the word, right? So like accessibility to those without the abilities, but also accessibility in that there are lots of entry points into getting help. And that means that, like in my perfect world, that means that, if you reached out to Tops, just like if you reached out to Coors, right? We're here in Colorado, and said, I have a problem. They would know where to send you, right? Oh, let me get you in touch with, here's the hotline for Collectors MD, here's the hotline for whatever it is, right? Or here's the contact info, you name it, right? So it becomes synonymous with getting help that is shame-free and that covers sort of the broad spectrum of the hobby. I think that's what the best sort of acute response system looks like. And then, I think Collectors MD especially bears burden, which I know is heavy, right, on you, in meeting people where they are. And I've never once seen you miss that mark. And I know it's exhausting, but whomever it is on the other end, whether it's Alyx or someone else, is taking the time to meet people where they are when they become vulnerable enough to say, I need help, or to raise their hand, or I have a problem, or I'm scared, whatever it is, right? And taking the time to sort of give them that personalized response that recognizes where they are and then begins to start that healing process. And I think that's an ideal response system, in the acute manner you're looking for.
Yeah, well said. How do we balance urgency with boundaries so that we don't burn people out?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, personally, this is not sexy, but I think it's an intake thing, right? So I think that's, hey, welcome, and then understanding again where people are, right? What are you in need of? What do you think would be helpful for you? I think that, at the risk of sounding like other sort of addiction adjacent support systems, and I don't have any experience with them, but finding partnerships, buddy systems, right? So that there are check-ins, there are regular check-ins. Is this working for you? Are you getting enough? Are you getting too much? Is this encroaching on, aspects of your life you don't want it to, whatever that is. I think that is this system working best. Now there's a lot of tapestry and scaffolding and building that has to take place for that to exist. But I think we're on, and I say we, Collectors MD is on the path towards building that. And I think you have the right ideas from an organizational standpoint in getting us there. You just hit on it, right?
Yep.
You are one person, but I have your back, right? And that a whole lot of other folks have your back as well. And so when the time comes, or when you need to tap out, right, we're going to step right in, and hopefully things will be seamless, and we're able to sort of respond to those urgent needs in the desire that they require, while also not, blowing people out and showing up at their house with sirens and things like that.
Yeah, man. Support systems work best when, they're designed, not sort of improvised in crisis. So we're going to transition over to our final segment, which is reform without losing the plot, advocacy versus partnerships. So you raised this in our advisory board meeting earlier this month, and I want to explore it here. How do we push for change without becoming a watchdog organization?
Yeah, and I didn't it's not like you sent me these questions ahead of time, right? Or I didn't review them ahead of time. And I want to be clear that, like, in my perfect world, it's both. That is not what Collectors MD is, however. And I think that is sort of a key part of the strategy. Now, if you force me to take the title of CEO or COO, whatever it was, to make these decisions, I think there's a parallel path, right? So I think there's a path that remains focused on meeting people where they are, getting treatment where it's necessary, assisting where we can, and being this sort of agnostic organization that is just a support mechanism for those who need it. And then there's a path that sort of exists as both a brand and a lobbying mechanism, right? That is like, hey, we, because of this other lane, we have this empirical data that shows X, Y, and Z, right? There are these dangers. There's this amount of harm, these many people affected, whatever it is. And so Collectors MD, lobbies for those changes with that other wing, while not ostracizing the fact that our heart and soul and DNA is based in, meeting people where they are and helping, affect change when they're ready to be changed in a shame-free environment that gets people healed and in a better relationship with the hobby.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, I think there's a lot to unpack there. For me, I think you raising this point was really important, and it's something that has come up before, and it sticks with me because it's a tension that we honestly keep running into, right? On one hand, there's a clear need to push for change, to call out harmful patterns, predatory behavior, and systems that are just really quietly benefiting from people not fully understanding the risks. But on the other hand, there's a real concern about not turning into this watchdog organization that's just constantly pointing fingers or playing referee, right? That kind of posture, that position can shut conversations down really fast, especially in a hobby that already gets super defensive when criticism shows up, right?
Yeah. I want to yes and your point, right? Which is, I think, so as you know, maybe viewers don't know, I'm all about those hard conversations, right? And I'm okay with difficult conversations, difficult topics, friction amongst groups, whatever it is, if it means moving towards a healthier direction. That's Paul, right? I think, to yes and your point, and to sort of curtail what Collectors MD does, I think what you've done with the direction is the harm reduction direction, which is the healthy choice, right? So if you partner with a huge platform or person or personality, or tomorrow you announce a partnership with Tom Brady's thing, whatever it is, right? And people are wringing their hands and being like, what is this organization partnering with, the biggest, most dangerous predator, whatever, right? The point is, you're getting more eyeballs into this space and availing ourselves to people that need the help. It is harm reduction, right? It doesn't mean that we tacitly endorse everything they do, they stand about, or everything they say. It is the idea is to get out there, be available, and let people know, so that there are, again, more entry points into that acute response system. And there's no perfect answer, right? There's no, like, you can't be everything all at once. It's not possible. And so I think that the direction that, we've talked about is the best towards harm reduction. And so I can't fault you, right?
Yeah, what you just said, you hit the nail on the head, right? I think it's so important to be really clear about what is and isn't our role at Collectors MD, right?
Yep.
We're not here to point fingers. We're not here to call people out. Honestly, and I've been saying this for a while now, it's just not our jurisdiction, right? There are groups, there are individuals, there are platforms that are better positioned to regulate, investigate, or enforce. What we're here to do is stand on the front lines with the people who are actually experiencing the fallout. We're the ones talking to collectors who are, upside down financially, emotionally burnt out, hiding purchases, carrying this sense of guilt and shame, or maybe trying to figure out how something that started as fun spun out of control. That's the gap we're filling. Support, education, and recovery don't happen in the form of press releases, right? They happen in conversations, in rooms, and moments of honesty. And that's also why we're partnering with various hobby brands and organizations and breakers and card shops. It's why it matters so much. Not because we're sort of co-signing every part of their business model, not because our missions are perfectly aligned. That's not the point. The point is access. These brands reach the people who need our help, often before these people even realize they need it. Being inside those conversations means we can meet collectors where they are with language that doesn't shame them and resources that actually help. So if we stayed on the outside just throwing stones, we'd lose our ability to reach the very people, the very audience we want to support. Change doesn't come, or it doesn't only come from pressure, it also comes from proximity, right? From being in the room, influencing the tone, normalizing guardrails, and making help visible in places where it's never existed before. At the end of the day, this isn't about, protecting brands. It's about protecting people. And sometimes the most effective way to do that is by showing up inside the ecosystem, not above it. So
we both said it a million times, right? But you can't triage unless you're meeting people where they are.
Exactly.
When you go into the ER, no one's like, oh, you fell off a ladder, like, get out of here, you idiot, right? Like, they treat you where you are, regardless of the circumstances. And that is how harm reduction and healing happens in this space as it does in every other.
Yeah, I think that's a great place to close things up before we transition over to our final round, which is the rapid fire questions. I am going to ask you a question. As you know, you're going to hit me with your first thought, honest answer. There are, let's see, I think 8 questions here. If, like I told you before we went live, there are any questions here that, you want to skip, just let me know. We're going to fire through these. You ready?
Yeah, shoot.
Okay. Most common lie collectors tell themselves when they're spiraling.
I'm smarter than everyone else.
One boundary that instantly changes behavior.
Spending limits.
One hobby practice you wish people stop normalizing.
Just one. Like new product chase, right? The latest, greatest, FOMO.
Yeah. One sign someone is chasing instead of collecting.
The need, the language that sort of demonstrates the need to come out ahead on everything.
Best advice for someone going to their first big show with a credit card and a dream.
This it sounds very cynical, right? But assume you're losing every transaction. Like, assume every single transaction is a loss.
Sorry, I lost my place. Here it is. One ethical standard you'd put on every table at every show.
Man, how about interesting? No, there's a lot. No sale. How about no sales without comps? Yeah. So nothing gets bought or sold without checking prices first.
If you could add one guardrail to every major platform tomorrow, what is it?
It is clear, first and foremost, clear and transparent odds on every product, every card, everything associated with it. Clear and transparent odds.
And last question, one slept on product intentional collectors should check out.
It's a good one. I'm actually primarily a baseball guy. And I think there's a lot of baseball products you may not know. I think one of the best ones that people sleep on is Pro Debut. So it's like it's players that like aren't in college jerseys, but aren't in their team's jerseys, which, by the way, we shouldn't care about because they're just like photoshopped on anyways in all the Bowmans, and they look real weird. And Topps Pro Debut is awesome. It's like the coolest place to get players before they're big and players that you like. And yeah, exactly. And
this is why I asked you this question. I saw this tweet. And I couldn't agree more. Like, I think this Connor Griffin card, for instance, he's wearing his Pro Debut jersey, and this minor league team actually has the same logo as the Pirates. Exactly. So I would say that, in my opinion, my intentional collector opinion, this card to me is more iconic than his first Bowman, where they just photoshopped
it is. It's actual Pro Debut. Yeah, absolutely.
I really liked that you tweeted this. Pro Debut is criminally slept on product each year. This crop of rookies is elite. This is going to be a great sale. And, they have the Pro Debut logo on it. And like the debut patch is what everyone's chasing. So This is a great place to start if you're looking to collect with intention. You can get some of these autos for pennies on the dollar compared to what their Bowman counterpart sells for. I mean, we're talking about some of the biggest names in the top 100 prospects, right? Leo DeVries, Walker Jenkins, George Lombard Jr., Connor Griffin, who's number 1, Jesus Mate. Like, these are all huge names. Jack Caglione. Like, this is a great set. I haven't written any of it, but definitely one that I would.
It's affordable, so that's the other reason. It's affordable. I think every box has like 4 autos, so like you don't have to get like a hobby box is like, I don't know, $75 or something. It is affordable. They have 4 autos, and then there's a smaller fun part, which is like minor league teams have awesome names and stuff. So you're gonna pull cards, right? That are like, dude, this guy plays on the Rocket City Trash Pandas, and this guy plays on the Lansing Nuts, right? Like, I have a card from a player who's on the Nuts. That's hilarious.
Yeah, it's awesome.
It's fun, right? And
that's what it should be. They have Topps and Topps Chrome, right?
Yes.
Cool.
They do both.
All right, Paul. This was an awesome conversation, man. It was really powerful. Lots of just really great topics and insights. I really appreciate you taking the time and just being willing to go, where this sometimes gets uncomfortable. What stands out to me is that none of this is about shaming the hobby. It's about protecting the people in it. Business can exist without exploitation. Profit doesn't have to come at the expense of harm, but only if we're willing to be honest about the systems we're participating in. I do have one final question for you, actually.
Yeah.
If someone listening feels like the hobby has started controlling them, what's one step they can take today that actually creates relief?
Well, I mean, aside from the sort of concrete stuff we talked about, like spending limits and things like that, that can be hard, right? It can be hard to self-impose. And at the risk of sounding sort of like a homer, reach out, right? So like, I know that's that can be hard too, but like, you can always reach out to me. I know, I'm just going to speak for him. I know you can always reach out to Alyx and the 5 million platforms that he's on, trying to, meet people where they are in this environment. And I know that there's lots and lots and lots of people at Collectors MD that are ready to listen, to hear you, to whatever it is, right? Be an ear without shame, provide advice, provide nothing, but just be present, be accountable for you, whatever it is. I will always be there to listen or help make connections. And I know that that's what Collectors MD is for too. It doesn't mean, I want to be clear, right? And this is a shame thing. Reaching out to Alyx, joining Collectors MD in the Discord or whatever it is, it doesn't mean you're in Gamblers Anonymous, right? It means you're in a community of like-minded people, the majority of which still collect, that are trying to find ways to do it healthy and make sure it's not controlling them, and then want to share in the joy of it with you without the shame of, hey, I think I maybe overextended a bit.
Yeah, well said, Paul. Thanks again for everything. If this episode resonated with you, make sure to subscribe, share, and be part of the shift toward a hobby where business can exist without exploiting the people inside it. And if you're struggling, feeling overwhelmed, or stuck in one more cycles, Collectors MD is here as a free resource. We host free weekly peer support meetings every Wednesday from 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern and a Thursday meeting from 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern in partnership with the Problem Gambling Coalition of Colorado, called Unboxed, powered by Collectors MD. All of our tools, resources, content, and support offerings can be found at collectorsmd.com. Be sure to subscribe to the Collectors Compass on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, and all major streaming platforms. And check out our other 2 shows, Behind the Breaks and Collectors MD Features. Paul, thanks again. I'm Alyx Efron. This is the Collectors Compass, reminding you to collect with intention, not compulsion. We'll see you next time.